This is K.N.Fitzwater and you're watching my channel. I have to apologize for not releasing my video last week. You may have seen him in the videos, but Squeaker, my orange tabby, was not feeling well. He had a UTI, a urinary tract infection. It can develop into emergency if I didn't take care of it as soon as possible. So I want to thank you all for your patience and understanding. Squeaker is totally fine right now. He's on medication. He has his nicotinating membranes showing whenever he takes his medicine. It kind of goes, whoa. In fact, there he is. Hi, Squeaky, come here. So there he is. He went to say hi. So he's fine right now. I'm very proud of Squeaker. I had hand raised him since he was a kitten. He's about 4.5 years old and he's so good. Normally when one medicates cats, usually they just hide from you. They hate you forever for doing the medicine. You kind of have to drag them out from their hiding hole and get the medicine again. But for the most part, he's pretty well behaved. Of course, I had to put him in a towel, which we call cat burritos, in order to give the medicine for him. But it takes no more than a half an hour for him to come back and say thank you. So he's very grateful that he's on this medication, and he's due back for the vet visit, I want to say the day before Thanksgiving, just to see he was clear of the bacterial infection that's going on. Normally he's very fastidious, and it really took me for a surprise that, you know, he had this infection. Just making sure that we're a little bit more vigilant on all the husbandry care on him, making sure he's clean, everything else is clean. So hopefully we won't deal with this again in the future. That's why the video is delayed. In many ways, it's a good thing that this video is delayed because in the original rotation, where if I had posted a video last week, the next video would have landed on the Thanksgiving weekend. And my family wants to have fun and relax and do a lot of things, and I won't be able to post a video for you guys. So in a way, you get more for your buck. You'll be able to get this video, which you're seeing today, and the one the week after Thanksgiving. So today in this video, I'm going to talk about critiques. I know most of you are going through NaNoWriMo, which is your first draft, and I know some of you pretty much had a good idea what you need to do for your second draft, and all I'm going to say that you may have to consider getting a critique partner, or being part of a writers group, or going to any other community event that will be able to give feedback on your work. It's a little bit different from beta reading. For those who is not familiar with the process, you create your first draft, you let it rest for like a week, which is torture. You check to see where your obvious problem spots are, you do your second edit, then you clean it up for beta readers. And the beta readers are your focus group. Normally they consist of friends and family if you're starting out, but as you develop your writing community through your author platform, you'll be able to have a more diverse group in your beta reading pool. And somewhere along the way in this whole process, before you get the manuscript to the editors or agents, is having a critique from others in the field who's going to give you their expert advice on what you should or should not do. There's nothing wrong in getting critiques or feedback for your work. And there's nothing wrong saying, okay, with this, I'm going to go and edit from what they have suggested. I used to have a critique partner, we're going to call him Bob, who gets so upset whenever I talk about editing. Back then I was very anxious, I was nervous, I was really hoping that this was the good work that I could come up with, and we all know the first draft is considered crap, but having the encouragement to continue on is great, but you don't want to have a critique partner that is negative, I want to say. As I was writing this draft, this first draft, I had Bob as a way to help me see if I'm doing things right or where I should improve. Bob had said he had published works before, and it's just a couple of short stories in a magazine and tour. I couldn't find his works, and but you know, I tried to take people at face value and, you know, believe what they say. I try not to assume that they're lying. To this day, I really don't know if it's true or not. I thought Bob knew what is what with the process, and turns out no, not really. It eventually developed to, oh, it's good, oh, it's great, it's fine, which is not something you want to hear from your critique partner. You want to have good critical feedback. I have played violin since I was in elementary school. My parents would fire my private teacher if she only said, oh, you're good, you're fine, and didn't work with me on the problems that I was having. And boy, did I have problems. I know that I have issues with my writing. I just don't see it, I just don't know. Eventually I got tired of hearing that, and I decided to just work on my own with no one, you know, taking a look at my work. This was, I think I stopped doing that since chapter 11, and I continue on without Bob's, you know, insights. Meantime, I try to keep my family up to date with what's going on with my work, and we always joke around. And then he will give really nasty feedback. What makes sense if he actually will read the work or actually seen it, and I didn't ask for such advice. So it was very difficult. So I continued on the first draft without his input, and worked on my own, and I finally got to a point where I had to edit the work. I was nervous because I'm a new author, I'm a new writer. This is a whole new field of experience for me. I'm jumping into this field from the sciences into something that's very creative and artistic, and I want to make sure I do things right the first time. I'm just that way. I have a lot of scientific foundation blocks that lead me up to a certain point where I could understand the complex processes, and I want to make sure I do the same for my writing and what I should expect and what I should look for. So as I was researching what to do with my editing, I kept hearing from Bob that I should not edit at all. It's wrong that I should want to edit because I'm perfect, the writing's great, I should not do that at all. That's what he kept telling me. There's nothing wrong in having someone being supportive, all the emotional help that they can give you, but this is the wrong way to receive it, and it's the wrong way to give it to someone else. A best way to support someone is, well, go ahead and calm down and breathe and think about it. What do you think you need to do for your editing? Because I personally think it's okay, but if you want to make it better, you know, let's find a way to help you make it better. That's probably the best way to tell someone when it comes to a new process they don't know. And I didn't receive that. And eventually, Bob Bob did some other things that has nothing concerning with my writing, and I no longer have him in my life. But I realized that back then I was trying to just get by. What I know now about back then was that I have creative control of my work, and Bob wanted to take control of that work, make it his own. I guess Bob had issues with having his works being edited. If you ever had a bad cheerleader that, or someone that is upset about a particular part of the writing process, it's usually because they're not comfortable with receiving feedback on that personal issue and they don't know how to handle that. Long time ago, like in the 80s and 70s and on, you have your first draft, and after like a couple of run-throughs just for spelling or whatever, you hand it to the publisher's house, and for the most part you work with that editor very closely and make it the best that it can. And you still have that today, but there's a lot more of cleanup before you hand it over to them. Back then, they don't mind doing the cleanup with you. So most of our editors expect a little bit more of a polished manuscript to work with. So of course they receive tons of manuscripts. I believe I heard one received like 1,000 in a week or 100 in a week. I could be wrong, but it's a really high amount. And I hear stories where they will sort out ones that abide by the formatting of the manuscript, and out of those they try to work with ones that are closer to publication stage in their mind. So there's a lot more pressure on the writer, especially a new writer, to edit as much as they could and get as much feedback before they hand it to the agent and subsequently the publishing house editor. You want to stand out in that pile of slush, and you want to grab their attention and say, hey, I'm worthy. Even though it's a great story, if it's not told right, it's going to get obscured with all sorts of problems like grammar, and you may not explain the setting all that well. I heard a lot of freelance editors love world building, and I think most readers like that too, on top of the good action and character interactions and story. I eventually was able to go onto YouTube and to other blogs, and I researched what I should be looking for, and I found K.N.Willen's website about story structure, really hooked onto story structure and the story theory, and I was able to grasp on that because I'm a scientist. You know, I love analyzing structures, anatomical structures, you know, like squeakies. I love disease processes, and I love looking at, you know, music, you know, how it all works and how it all comes together. I was able to find what I was needing, and I looked at my first draft and I was able to restructure the way I needed to. And that switched up some chapters, that created new chapters. I had eventually learned that in the fantasy genre, normally they don't go for the 80,000 words. The minimum they usually go for is 90,000. And I felt great. To edit your own work gives you a sense of empowerment. You're not editing for everyone else but yourself and what your standards are as a reader, as an audience. And my standards are pretty high. I love action. I love character interactions. I love big bangs. I love dramas. I love internal thoughts. So I try to put that all in there in my second draft. And it's great to feel that you have control of your own art. That's why I had issues with Bob. To know that your work needs work just simply means that you are molding it to a new version of yourself that's a little bit better than what you originally were when you first started. This first draft was a span of 5 months. And I grew so much over that time period as a writer. So if you ever dealt with anyone that wants to give you critical feedback, but all you're getting is this weird, you're perfect, you're fine, you don't need to do anything, dump that person. It's best to work with people who had writing experience of some sort. I'm so blessed to have parents who have really good critical eye and give really blunt feedback. It's a little bit hard because you feel like you let them down for not being able to reach that standard. But on the flip side, it's great to hear, you know, oh, you need to work on this. Oh, you need to change that. I love them for it. They're really awesome, and even though they've done other jobs other than writing, they're educated and well informed as readers and an audience members, and they've done other writing works for their companies. So it's great to pick their brain for a bit. They're a very imaginative group. Last week in the Carnegie Center, which is in my hometown, they have a first page critique panel. It's these 3 authors. I think the minimum amount they have published is like 3, 4, and one is a well-established journalist. And all of them are women, and so I thought I could just see what they think, and I was really nervous. I did not know what to expect, and I guess I do have the fear of the unknown, just a little bit. I wasn't sure how they're going to set it up. I really don't know what they're going to say about the first page. My stomach was going to somersaults. So I really dressed up as best as I could to meet them, and I handed my first page into submission. In fact, I had them right here. So these are their copies, and I was number 12. I knew I was slow in my first page, and I was really nervous that it wasn't an action sequence. And the only big complaints, or actually criticisms they gave, was the world building, but in the sense of where they are in the location. If they are in a desert, just describe a little bit of the desert, you know, the heat, the sand, give a sense of place. They also want a clarification between the main character and his best friend. Why are they so formal even though they are familiar with each other for years? I believe in Japan and Russia and some other places where such formalities do exist, even though you know each other for years and years, and you could call each other friends. We don't have that here anymore. We're pretty much frank with each other. We go, okay, that's your surname, but I'm going to call you by your first name because it's just easier. The only time you have to worry about your last name is due to family and paperwork, and when you have to schedule an appointment. For the most part, they don't call you by your last name. In a way, I'm kind of glad that I know these things, because I did not know that it was not enough. And it's good to know that it's not enough. I could expand a little bit more. In the sciences, you're supposed to be more concise and blunt and straightforward. And I only had like a paragraph or two about the the area that he's in. So I really pull back on the environment. And I don't think I'll be able to get to those formality issues in the first page, but I'm sure that's going to happen in the next page or so. So it's awesome to receive this feedback. It makes me feel good that I don't have to have a big bang action. The first word, I survived, is just good enough. They had the panel sitting up front, kind of like a wedding reception, or in the Comic-Cons. Yeah, you guys know Comic-Con. They have the panelists sitting up front on the stage, and they have a podium. And there's an option whether to have you read your own work or to actually have someone else read your work. So I thought, well, I'm nervous as hell, so I let someone else do it. And in Kentucky, we bastardize everything. Versailles, okay, Versailles is Versailles. Athens is Athens. Pikeville is Pikeville. And Louisville, well, okay, Louisville is Louisville. So we slur, we change vowels. You can tell I'm a native because I say the local dialect first. And she butchered the main character's name. It's Aramis. And she butchered Ryla. Both of them are mentioned in the first page. I think she also butchered Gingerly as Generally. I mean, she's a nice lady. I thank her for going through all those papers and reading them out loud, but it made me wonder if I should change those names. So I'm going to wait until I hear from the beta readers whether those names need to be changed or not. Like I said, it's a work in progress. Everything is all in flux, and depending on whether they love it or hate it, I'm going to adjust to that. So it's a lot of collaboration after you do your first and second draft. Oh yes, they also commented on the adjectives. Me and Anne of Green Gables are kindred spirits. We love adjectives, we love words. So I had a string of adjectives when it came to like showcasing Rayla. So I'll fix that. But it's a wonderful experience. I love meeting other fellow writers. It's wonderful to know that I have such a strong community here. I'm not completely alone. And it's not just all online, it's also here physically. And it's also wonderful to know that these people are doing their craft well past 50. I saw people in their 60s and 70s still writing out these wonderful stories. And they're all great. And I love hearing all the diverse voices in all these different genres. I think a couple of people are doing some historical fiction. A couple of people are doing thrillers. One did a great children's book, and even a poem was even recited, and it was great. I love it. It's great to know that I have this community here, and that I'm not alone. And it can be isolating trying to do this work, and you may be blind to some other things that they may be saying. And it's great to hear such feedback. Oh, and also was invited to the writers group. They had their meeting of this month a couple of days ago, and I didn't go because I was trying to finish up some things before beta reading. I'm hoping that once I get the beta reading session going, I could hop over and like see what it's all about. And I wonder if it's the same thing. I don't know. So I may make a video of that. But for the most part, they say that in their group, they don't have people berate their work just for ego or for personal gain. and they recognize that your work is your own creative work. What they're just doing is just suggesting or supporting you. That's something I really needed. I wish I had discovered all of this when I was making my first draft, and I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad to discover it, and I hope to continue to use them in the future. Yeah, just to wrap up in my video, do not listen to bad cheerleaders. You are always in control of your work, and if you ever need to improve your work, go for it, because that's part of the artistic process. You are an artist of your own craft. It's going to take many different iterations to get to the final point of your work where you can get it out there in the world. And there's nothing wrong in looking for critical feedback, so long they recognize that you are in control of your work, and they are going to just give you some really good advice. They are there to make sure that you are putting out the best you in your work, and they just want you to succeed, because they know that you will eventually come around and help them and support them, and they're going to give that support back. That's all I have for today for the video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and I'll see you next week.